Hi, I'm Brooke Allen for Civic Center TV, and it is back to school, and that means a lot of buses out there on the roads. I am joined by Lynne Robertson, and Lynne, there is so much involved in bus safety, and a lot of people don't know exactly what to do when they see a bus on the roadway. I know I, for one, have panic attacks when I see a bus stop and those lights flash because I don't exactly remember what to do from my whole driver's ed training. So go ahead and start us off with the lights flashing and the different stops and what everything means. Go ahead and tell me exactly what a hazard stop is.
Sure. Brooke, a hazard light bus stop is a bus stop where motorists are not required to stop. The bus is using its hazard lights, which are below the windshield, I guess is the best way to describe it. Similar to on a vehicle where you have your turn indicators, those are the hazard light stops. And when buses make those types of stops, children are not crossing the roads, and vehicles can legally drive around the bus on the left side of the bus, or if they're coming from the front, they can pass the bus. They do not have to stop. Students are not crossing.
So just to recap, the stop sign on the bus would not be out, the yellow lights would be flashing, and no students would be crossing.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so then we get to the red lights flashing.
Yes.
And the stop sign is out, and that means students are going to be getting off the bus, and this is where drivers really need to pay attention.
Absolutely, yes. When we do alternating red light bus stops, which are the majority of our bus stops in the West Bloomfield area, drivers by law are required to stop no closer than 20 feet from the bus, either coming from behind the bus or coming towards the bus. They are required to stop. It is against the law if they don't. And the reason is because students could be crossing the road. You do not obviously want to hit a student or put anyone in jeopardy or do anything that could be a dangerous situation for students as they're crossing the street.
So describe what that looks like.
What that looks like is the bus is approaching a bus stop. There will be some flashing yellow lights. Those are towards the top of the bus. They'll be at the front of the bus and at the rear of the bus, so motorists can see them from either direction. And that should start about 200 feet prior to the bus stop. When the bus makes its stop, then the driver will open the door and the red lights will come on, and at that point motorists have to stop. And students will be boarding the bus, or they could be getting off the bus. And as I said earlier, they could be crossing the street, either getting on or off the bus.
And when is it all clear for motorists to actually drive again?
It is safe for them to proceed when those alternating red lights are off, when they're no longer flashing.
And when the stop sign goes back in, correct?
Yes.
And that means all the students are clear.
Yes.
The lights are off, and you can go ahead and proceed.
Yes.
So a lot of people actually don't know this information. You know, you learn it a long time when you take driver's education. But there's huge penalties involved if you should happen to ignore the stop sign on this bus and the stop bus on the side of the road.
That's true. Like I said, it is a law that motorists do have to stop. If they don't stop, if they pass a school bus with its alternating red flashing lights on, the fine could be up to $500 and 3 points on your license. Now, our bus drivers and a lot of times parents who witness this can report a driver to the police department, and if they have the license plate, which in most cases are able to get that, and a description of the vehicle and the driver, that driver will receive a ticket in the mail.
So just because they think that they've gotten away with it, they might be pretty surprised when they open their mail a couple days later and find this ticket. And the ticket's a hefty fine.
Yes, it is.
And not only is the ticket a hefty fine, you've got the points, 3 points you said, on your license. So your insurance is going to go up, and not to mention the safety to the kids, and that's really what it's all about.
Absolutely, yep. We want to make sure that our students are safe as they're walking to bus stops and they're getting on the bus and as they're getting off the bus at the end of the day. And one of the things that motorists need to remember is that especially young children are very unpredictable. You know, they might run out, they might run into the street not knowing that it's dangerous. So even if you see a bus stop that doesn't have its red lights, but it has its yellow light flashing, proceed with caution. Watch for children and be careful.
So how many bus stops do you have in West Bloomfield?
We probably have hundreds of bus stops. We have 45 bus routes this year, and you know, many of those bus routes make multiple stops, and we run in a 4-tier system, meaning we have high school is our first tier, and then our middle school, and then our elementary schools. So we cover a very large area in a short amount of time.
And so the same bus drivers work those same routes day after day?
Yes, yes they do.
So they get to know the kids pretty well?
Yes, they do, which is very important because parents want to feel comfortable when they're putting their child on a bus. They want to make sure they're safe, and they want to know that bus driver. They want to know them by name, and they want their child to feel safe and to be comfortable, and we want them to enjoy their ride both to and from school every day.
And so another key too, not only the bus safety on the roads, but also on the bus, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but just the whole, you have to be patient.
Yes.
I mean, the parents have to be patient putting their kids on the bus. The kids have to be patient. I know when bad weather strikes, although we live in Michigan, so that's
yes.
never going to happen, right?
That's right. We're crossing our fingers
exactly,
for that.
Exactly. So we don't have to worry about that. But when there's weather delays, I
yes.
imagine there's traffic delays.
Yes.
So what happens when you guys are delayed on the roads? How do you deal with that?
Well, we do the best we can. What we try to do, if we have, for instance, if there's one particular bus that's delayed on a day, maybe they're caught in an area where there is an accident and the bus can't proceed. What we do is we will ask other drivers to pick up some of the students for that particular bus driver, so that the students are not waiting out in the cold or in the rain, and so that we can get them to school on time. So we have a great group of drivers that really pitch in and help each other out when things like that do happen. They don't want to see students standing out in the cold, so they will pitch in and help each other out.
Finished talking to Lynne about safety on the roads concerning school buses, and now we're going to turn our attention to Greg Campbell, who is in charge of safety. And you've got 3,000 kids that you transport every day, and I can imagine that causes some safety issues at the bus stops and also on the buses. So let's start with safety at the bus stops. What do kids and parents need to know?
Well, it's important for the families that we're picking up to understand they need to be out there at least 10 minutes early to be ready for us, and they need to be gathered together at a place not on the roadway but in a driveway or on the grass. They need to be out of the road and waiting for this 10-ton vehicle to pull up. There should not be any horseplay at the bus stop. They need to be gathered and watching for us, and then they need to wait until that bus stops and that door opens, because once that door opens, the driver has done everything that they're supposed to do to allow for safe boarding. And so we don't want kids moving until that bus is stopped and that door is open. And if there's kids on the other side of the road that need to cross, they're going to have to wait for the driver to signal them. And in West Bloomfield, every school bus has one of these crossing paddles. And so the driver will show them that it's safe to cross once they've done everything in their power to provide that safe crossing. But then we also need the kids to look for themselves too, because the bus driver can't stop the car behind them that decides, oh, the reds are flashing, it's a stop sign, I'm going to go now, and try to pass us. The kids need to look for themselves and make sure that it's clear to cross in front of the bus.
Well, it's really kind of a team effort.
Absolutely.
I mean, the bus driver can do all that they can do, and they are trained. In fact, you train them.
Yep.
But the students need to learn that, I think, as part of going to school and their responsibility, that they need to pay attention to their own safety.
Absolutely. A lot of the responsibility falls to them. We do everything we can, but we can't control all the environments associated with it. And then once those kids get on, they need to recognize that this is a moving classroom. They need to sit. There's 10 rules that are posted at the front of each school bus, and if I could highlight maybe 2 of them, it would be sit down. If the kids are sitting, that just takes care of a lot of the challenges that we run into. If they're sitting, they're not going to be bothering other students over the top of the seat. They're not going to have their arms out the window because they're sitting. And I guess the second rule that I always highlighted when I used to drive years ago was inside voices. That driver's got to be able to hear on the radio if they call for something, a student's missing or we're concerned about something. We need to be able to hear the radio, and we need to be able to focus on our driving and pay attention to what's happening around us. We have a mirror that we can look at our 65 students, but for the majority of the ride, we have our back to our classroom, and that becomes a challenge. So we need our kids to sit. We need our kids to visit with each other in the seats. The student in the front should not be having a conversation with the student in the back, because then you're going through 64 students to do that. And it's a short ride. We'll get them to school safely if they sit inside voices and they'll enjoy the ride.
Is there assigned seating on buses?
Usually for like your kindergarten, first graders, the drivers for the most part will put those students in the front. Because we want to learn those kids. We can't let a kindergarten or first grader off the bus without a parent or their older sibling being here. We got to have an adult represented there at the bus stop. So we want our drivers to learn those kindergarten and first grade students by face and by name. So we'll usually have them up front. And there's kind of a rite of passage, if you will. It seems like those fifth graders in the elementary, they look forward to when they get the last seats in the bus. And the same with your eighth graders at middle school. That they've earned that right until they misbehave on the bus, and then they're assigned a front seat.
Okay, so actually, when you're young, you sit in the front because the driver needs to keep tabs on you, so to speak.
That's correct.
But then when you get older, you can move pretty much wherever you want, unless you're bad.
Unless you're misbehaving, yeah. If you're not behaving in the back of the bus, we're not going to let you sit in the back of the bus.
So it's kind of like a timeout in the front of the bus.
I guess you could call it that, yeah.
Okay, and so let's talk about real quick the idea of kids moving and talking. And, the bus driver is driving this huge, how many pounds did you say?
10 tons.
10 tons. I mean, that's a huge responsibility, but they're also getting to know each child on this bus that they transport. And that is a lot of care and responsibility.
We don't take it lightly. This is a precious cargo that we carry. All of our drivers are endorsed with a passenger endorsement. They've been trained in how to deal with behavior, if you will. And so they try to bring the best out of the kids. When a child enters this bus first thing in the morning, for many of them, the first adult face they see is this bus driver. And we don't know the home story of each of these kids, but some of these kids appreciate and need that smile from that driver and that attention that they'll receive. And sometimes we're the last face they see when they leave. Moms and dads work many hours. Home situations are different for each and every family. So we try to provide that good start of the day and a good finish to the day. And then we expect the kids to be respectful to the driver and to do what's required of them.
So we talked about the students. What about the parent or caregiver who are bringing the children to the bus stop? I mean, they obviously need to have some responsibility as well. I mean, if it's a younger child, a kindergartner or a first grader, they need to pick them up and they need to be prompt, right? Because the bus driver wouldn't be able to proceed.
We will have to take the child back to the school that we picked them up from. So, and that happens periodically. We understand that things happen, parents work, or maybe the person that they've put in charge of receiving the child didn't get here. So every once in a while, we'll get a call on the radio, hey, Susie's mom's not here. I'm taking her back to the school. And then once Susie's mom calls to say, where's my kid? Your kid's going back to the school because there was no one there to receive them, and we can't leave them by themselves.
So can a parent call dispatch and let you know, hey, I'm stuck in traffic,
Absolutely.
a bad accident, and you can make arrangements for that as long as they're in touch with you?
Absolutely, because I'll call the driver and say, hey, Susie's mom is running late. She may or may not be at the bus stop. Every once in a while, these runs are set up where the driver can circle back around. Keep Susie on the bus, finish her run, and instead of going all the way back to the school, they might go right back to the bus stop, and by then Susie's mom's there.
So what's the phone number parents would call if that were to happen?
The office number is 248-865-3680.
I know the first couple of weeks of school, a little bit crazy, people getting to know each other. Of course, the bus drivers getting to know the kids getting to know the bus drivers. I can imagine that could be scary for children, just maybe getting on the bus for the first time. So how do you deal with that, or how do the bus drivers deal with that, or do you have any advice for parents?
We would encourage parents to label, put a tag right on their child's coat or on the backpack, with name and address and phone number. The schools do an excellent job of labeling bus routes on kids' hands, making sure that they make it to the proper bus in the afternoon and that sort of thing. But, we're going with a student list, and we're following maps and directions, and we're getting the child to the right stop. And we need those parents, especially for the youngest ones, to be there to receive that child, just to make sure all those connections are made. And like you mentioned, those first 2 weeks, 65 kids is a lot of names for a bus driver to learn. And so they're trying their best to figure out who's who and who gets off where. And sometimes you'll have a child that just didn't get off at their stop. They're talking to Joey and having a great ride, and next thing you know, they're the last one on the bus. So then we'll end up finding out who they are, where they live. Teach your children their address. So many times, where do you live, Susie? Michigan. And there isn't much we can do with that. So teach your child, I live at this address, or I live on this street. Anything they can give us will help. And of course, we're calling into the office. The drivers are calling and asking for information, so we can pull it up on our records who the student is. And usually by then the parents also calling to say, where's my child?
Right.
Oh, your child was having a great conversation and just enjoying the ride. So we work that out.
The West Bloomfield School District entire bus fleet has passed the Michigan State Safety Police inspection for 5 years in a row by 100%. Keeping your kids safe on the roads and in the buses. For Civic Center TV, I'm Brooke Allen.